We're live and we're back for the season finale. Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted on all charges. I'm Nico Fideli.
And I'm Brittany Fideli.
And this is For the Republic.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Ask not what your country can do for you.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Welcome back to another episode of For the Republic. We're so excited you're here. Remember to like this video and share it with all your friends. If you're listening, don't hesitate to drop us a 5-star review. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so that you can be notified every Sunday night when a new episode drops. Of course, not for a few weeks because this is actually our season finale.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
So we've been gone for a few weeks.
Yeah, we've been gone for a few weeks. We've been dealing with sickness, and we actually both contracted COVID.
Yeah.
And so we've been out for a while, and we left you guys in the dark, but we're back for a season finale.
We didn't die.
No, we
guys.
didn't die.
We didn't.
We made it.
We were unvaccinated and we didn't die.
Unvaccinated, and we made it.
We probably killed dozens of vaccinated people, though.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
At least dozens.
Yeah, because all of our sickness spewed out of our house.
Yeah.
'Cause, you know, we have bad windows, so...
Yeah, because when you're in quarantine and you have COVID, yeah, it like seeps through the pores of the drywall.
If you have a chimney, it's all over.
Yeah,
Killed
yeah.
hundreds of people.
If you have a fireplace, that's it, man.
But
You
yeah,
probably wipe out your whole city.
You know, honestly, I thought, you know, when I was sick, it was pretty rough. But you know, I didn't even think about COVID because it wasn't like bad enough to warrant me thinking, oh, I have COVID. But you know, we decided to do an at-home test about 4 or 5 days after I was struggling with a fever.
Yeah, actually, I don't think we would have even thought to do a COVID test if it hadn't been for the fact that somebody else that we were in contact with actually tested positive for COVID.
Yeah.
And that's
yeah.
what kind of prompted us to do the COVID test. But originally, we didn't even think it, because it wasn't even as bad as like a flu.
Right.
You know, the flu, it's like pretty intense body aches. But I think the most severe symptom you had was really a long-lasting fever.
Yep.
Low-grade, long-lasting fever.
Yeah, it was low grade. The highest it was maybe like 101.5 or so.
I think it was 101.8 maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, low grade
pretty
fever. It was the longest that I've ever battled a fever. I think that I can remember.
Nice long 5 days.
Yeah, nice long 5 days. And it's funny because it broke for a little bit, and all I did was take Advil. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I felt fine when I took Advil. My fever broke, but then it like spiked back up.
Yeah, so it wouldn't really ever break for more than just like a couple hours at a time. Then it would spike back up. So that was probably your most severe symptom. And then you had just a little bit of vomiting.
Yeah, vomited a couple times, but that was about it. I mean, honestly,
You lost your sense of taste and smell.
Completely
That was probably
lost.
the worst thing.
Yeah.
That was worse than the fever, I think, for him. He was ready to let go.
I was ready to end it all.
God, come get me.
Yeah.
Send your angels with the chariot.
But yeah, I mean, as far as everything else, you know, and you contracted it as well, but you did not get any symptoms.
Yeah,
just
I had it so much worse than you because I just had like a stuffy nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hard.
You didn't even you lost your taste of smell a little bit, but
I didn't really lose my taste. I lost my sense of smell.
You lost your
and
smell.
I didn't even realize it at first, actually, because I don't know. I just like didn't really notice it was gone. And then I went to change the garbage, and the garbage didn't stink. And I was like, wow, our garbage doesn't stink this week. And then I was like, wait a minute. There's no way our garbage doesn't stink this week. And then I started smelling random things around the house, like candles and stuff. So things that I would normally
I'm still doing that,
smell
and
very strong.
It's funny because I'm getting my taste and smell back just a little bit, and I'm at like a place right now where I don't really smell bad things. Like I only smell good things. Like I'll smell
it's
chocolate.
really nice though, right?
I'll smell like, you know, the steak that we had tonight. I'll smell that, but like. As far as like, you know, like the garbage, like you said, or like something that stinks in the fridge, I don't smell any of that.
Yeah, you know, the first thing that I smelled after like losing my smell was garlic.
Yeah.
You were cooking chicken Alfredo like a few nights ago, and that was like the first thing that I could distinctly smell. And I was like, oh, I can smell that garlic, so I must be getting my smell back. And of course, garlic's very strong. So then about like 2 days later, I could start smelling like candles again. And then when we changed the garbage this week, I could definitely smell it. So yeah, our garbage does stink. stink. It was not some fluke of unsmelly garbage.
But yeah, so that's kind of like what we've been dealing with the last couple of weeks.
So we wanted to come back, but because of the congestion and everything, Nico couldn't make it through like a 15 minutes without just hacking. So we thought it would be better for your ears and your sanity not to listen to him cough for a whole episode.
I haven't done my due diligence on socials though. I've really been in the dark. So
yeah,
but
I'm gonna be honest with you. He's been slacking off playing video games. So
I've been slacking.
Don't let him get away with it, chat. Let him know.
But our plan going forward is we're not going to completely, do what we did the last few weeks. We're going to think of some kind of short form content that we can supply to you guys, and some fun stuff, some serious stuff. But I really feel like going into this holiday season, for me, I think it's healthy for our family that we lay off politics a little bit. We're really passionate about politics and things like that, but this is a season where, we come together,
right.
Even though like some of our family members even might have different opinions than we do. I feel like, I hate reading those stupid articles on like Washington Post or the New York Times or how to deal with your conservative uncle kind of thing. Yeah. Where it's like, can we literally just put the politics aside? It's not
like the new thing, like don't go see family members if you get triggered.
Yeah.
If you get triggered by your family members, don't go see them. I'm like, why are you getting triggered? Like, I mean, like I'm related to some pretty dumb people. I'm going to be honest with you. And like, if you are related to me and you're watching this podcast, you know who I'm talking about. So, but yeah, but I've never not gotten together, I guess, for a holiday celebration because I'm like worried about being triggered by a family member. It's more like if like they say something stupid, I'm just like, okay, we'll have fun with that.
I feel like the politics have been so polarized in the country that it seems like, I'm not putting everybody in this pool, but it seems like majority of the time people on the left like get really easily triggered and don't want to talk about politics, where like people on the right kind of do it as a troll, where they're like excited to talk about politics.
Oh my gosh, like I feel like every time we get together with your family, politics always comes up. Like it literally always comes up when we get together with your family. Yeah,
I feel like people on the right, like who used to be like really reserved and not really care, are kind of like kind of, it's like devious, like where they kind of get a little excited to trigger somebody about politics because they, so like I feel like there's kind of like flaws on both sides, but I feel like this holiday season doesn't matter what your political view is.
I think it's important to note like that people of different political views can come together and have like relationships. And so it's one of the things that really bothers me about the Obama administration is the Obama administration was very dividing, as particularly with politics and race. Those were two areas where like the Obama administration really divided the country, both in policy with the things that they would talk about, so their bullet points, just the way that they presented themselves. But I just realized that this curtain is wide open. Can you see that?
No, it's all right. I don't think you can see it.
Just threw me for a loop because usually you can behind me. So
yeah, no, I think it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're good. So, but one of the things to note is that like Obama is friends with the Bushes.
Yeah.
Like, like George W. Bush, like, is friends with Barack Obama and Bill Clinton.
And Clinton, yeah.
So, actually, he and his father and their family, they actually endorsed Hillary Clinton when she ran against Donald Trump because they are friends with the Clintons. So it's interesting to note that the same people who were willing to divide the country over politics are actually friends with one another.
Right.
So if they can manage to get along, like if the Bushes and the Clintons and the Obamas can manage to get along at the end of the day, I think we can all manage to get along,
Yeah.
If you can be president of the United States and be on literal opposing sides of the fence, then I think that we can all manage to have a turkey and we can talk about whether we agree with politics.
That goes on both sides of the aisle. Like I feel like the left would like kind of like alienate people on the right and say like, how could you dare like even like consider them to be human? Where actually people on the right kind of almost do the same thing, where like there's some people who are predominantly, pretty popular who are of the right that don't agree with presidents of different political views being friends and having a social circle and stuff like that. They say it's bad publicity, it's bad for the face of the whatever their party is and stuff like that. Where like I feel like at the end of the I feel like if you're talking with a sitting president, maybe like you have some sort of argument where if, let's say, Biden was, like doing something with, Reagan while he was president or something, like if he was president when Reagan was alive or something like that, two polar opposites. But like, I feel like I
think Biden was in politics actually before Reagan was born.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure Biden was in politics before, the draft of the Constitution.
I think he actually might have entered into Congress like sometime shortly after George Washington's presidency.
Yeah. Yeah, around that time. But I mean, like,
all jokes aside.
All jokes aside. But like, I mean, typically, like, I feel like, especially when somebody's not a sitting president or not in politics, like, I feel like then like it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah.
Personally, I mean, they can do whatever they want. So
yeah, I think we should just all be friends with one another because we should be able to have political discussions and disagreements and not have to have like a
be friends.
Yeah, like I don't really understand why people have to like you have to agree with someone in order to get along with them. Like I just think that's so limiting and like your potential for contacts.
Not to go too long on a tangent, but that kind of like I feel like this kind of is a good time to talk about real quick about like what about personal life? Like I mean like spouse, for example. Like, do you think like it's important for your spouse to have at least similar political views?
I think it's an interesting. I think that's an interesting question. I know personally for me, it was important for us to have similar views, and we do not agree on everything by any means. There's definitely been some we've had some hot button, political discussions and stuff. And like at the end of the day, there have been things that neither one of us have compromised our opinion on, and we're okay with that. But for the most part, I think it's very important that your significant other have the same core beliefs. Yeah. So I think that there's things where you can differ, where you can have different opinions, you can have different thoughts and stuff, and that's fine. I think the big issues like, is abortion morally right or wrong? Yeah. Should it be legal or should it be illegal? That's a huge issue. And if you have a spouse who believes that abortion is okay, it should be legal, and then a spouse who believes quite the opposite, your very foundation of what you consider life and the importance that you place upon that life, it so varies that I think that would cause issues. But I think that if you kind of have very similar views on the big issues and like the really big selling points, that the little things you can kind of, or like the more minor issues you can. So would it be like
more like social issues where like I feel like economics is something like you can kind of disagree with, like if
we personally disagree on whether or not businesses should deny services to people if they disagree with their lifestyle. Yeah. So that's one thing that we disagree on, and we have always disagreed on that. I think since the very beginning, it's been something that we've disagreed on. We both believe that businesses should have the right to serve whoever they want to, and they should have the right to deny services to whoever they want to. But you personally think it's okay for somebody to turn away service if they don't agree with something, like for instance, the cake maker who refused to do the gay wedding cake. Yeah. And I personally think if you have a cake shop, then make the darn cake, So I think you should have the right. We both agree on that, but we disagree on whether the action is actually kind of like okay or not.
Like morally justified?
Yeah. And so like, we have like the core belief, like, yes, businesses should have these rights because it's their business. We just disagree on whether they should do that or not.
Right. Right.
Whether they should actually do it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, good discussion there. I mean, I think that I would agree that I think that it's important for, two people who plan on spending the rest of their lives together, they agree on important issues. Mm-hmm. So, excuse me, if politics is not important for either one of them, then, I mean, by all means, I guess you don't really have to align too much. As long as you guys can respect each other, like if you guys are voting for two different people, if you guys can justify that, if you guys, I mean, it's so important to me where like I would never marry somebody who would vote for like somebody like who is completely, especially now, like, I mean, like I feel like
Rona still got you.
Yeah, Rona still got me a little bit. I feel like party lines were a little bit blurred, like even 20 years ago.
Right.
Or like you could vote for a libertarian, I can vote for a Republican, and then like they would line up on some things. Where like now, like it's so completely like set
So
in stone, so contrasted from each other, where like if you were to vote, let's say a Democrat and I was to vote a Republican, like we would potentially be voting the complete opposites of each other.
I remember before we actually started dating, and we were talking about politics one evening, and I said if Donald Trump was the nominee, I wasn't going to vote. And I think you almost had an aneurysm.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
Like, I mean,
and I was like, I'm just kidding. Of course I'm going to vote.
Yeah.
It's just that Donald Trump was certainly not my favorite candidate.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I thought he was an excellent policy-wise president, but I always really did not care for his personality from the beginning, so policy wise, fantastic. It just, that personality really gets on my nerves. It still gets on my nerves. It got on my nerves through the entire presidency. So, I wasn't sitting there like, oh my gosh, I'm a Trumper and I, can't stand Democrats. It wasn't like that. There were definitely things that were left to be desired with the Trump presidency.
But that's a perfect example of kind of like the theme we've been talking about is that you and I disagreed so much on President Trump throughout his presidency, or like how he like handled stuff, or like how he did stuff, or like what he was doing. You and I kind of went tit for tat a lot of times, but at the end of the day, like our core value was that, we felt this was the best candidate to be the president compared to
It's funny
Hillary.
though, we both wanted Marco Rubio in there.
Yeah,
So
we did. We did want Marco Rubio. I will say for the record that I'm glad Marco Rubio didn't get it because I ended up not really liking him. But I do think that he's come around and I think he's had a drastic improvement. But I think that stands for a lot of Republicans. Like, I feel like, like people like Rick Santorum, Ted Cruz, and those guys. Like, I mean, I did not really like those guys in 2016.
Neither did I.
But I really have like a strong respect for Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz because they both have stood up for what they believed in. And that was because Trump kind of gave the backbone back to the Republican Party in a way.
I would agree with that. I think Marco Rubio really kind of went, he went a little bit spineless in 2016. And then I think he realized that it didn't really work for him and it wasn't a good look on him. And I think he kind of turned that around and he's been pretty steadfast and has been a really big advocate for some major issues
like Cuba and stuff like that.
Right. He definitely was a huge advocate for Cuba. Not that that changed the Biden administration's behavior, but so we've seen a lot of that. I think maybe you'll see Marco Rubio take a more major role in the future. I don't know that he'll ever be president, but I could definitely see him being a vice presidential candidate in the future. I think the presidential ship might have sailed on that, but we'll see. Yeah. He might run again.
Yep. So yeah, we're like almost 20 minutes into this and we didn't get to our headline story yet.
We did not get to any headline stories. And actually, interestingly, so we had some good news this week. Well, this week with Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yep. On Friday, he was acquitted of all charges.
Yes.
So we're in good vibes right now. We're really excited. It's a huge win for our justice system. It's a huge win for self-defense. And
across the country, not just for Kyle Rittenhouse, but across the country.
This sets a great precedent that, if you find yourself in a situation where your life is in danger and you have a firearm, you are right to use it. And I was very impressed with the trial. It seemed like they did their due diligence. I think it took a little bit longer than it should have, but that's my opinion.
Took a little long. The defense had some missteps. I think
the defense had huge missteps.
Prosecution was totally out of line for like about 80% of the trial. They were very, very sketchy. I would venture to say that if there's any sort of balanced system, that prosecutor will probably face some disciplinary issues going forward for his performance
at the very least, I think his reputation is pretty much shattered at this point. Honestly, I think the defense was damaged pretty hard too. I think this was a very clear-cut case, and the fact that there was any, controversy or any, thing up in the air, I think was the fault of the defense because, the judge was just handing them, Well, the judge was doing his job. Yeah.
The judge was very well balanced. I thought, actually, incredibly surprised because I thought there was no way that they were going to get a balanced judge. He was very good about keeping the prosecution in line. He was very good about making sure that they didn't get away with missteps when they tried to introduce evidence that they hadn't previously brought to the court. When they went along lines of questioning that once again had previously not been brought to the court, he was very quick to stop that from happening. And the defense just kind of like sat there and just didn't capitalize on any of it. I mean, the defense really should have put the prosecution on trial, especially when requesting the mistrial, and they just didn't. They just floundered.
They kind of just sat back and you could have had, I think, a paperweight for a defense, and it would have been just as good. Honestly, I don't think the defense really did much of anything for Kyle Rittenhouse. I think and if you guys haven't been following the case, very well, and if you guys are still on the fence about, what you think was right, I mean, we can go through just some of the highlights real quick that, I think that the defense, they came strong with the one gentleman who had the pistol. I think they did a decent job with that. They got him to confess that he pointed the pistol at Rittenhouse and that he charged at Rittenhouse, and it was then that Rittenhouse retaliated and fired back. So
right, and he did try to deny it, and the defense pushed him there, and then he had no choice. I mean, the whole thing was on video, and they literally were playing it clip by clip. This is you. This is you talking to Rittenhouse, correct. This is Rittenhouse not firing on you, correct. This is you pulling your pistol and aiming it at Rittenhouse, correct. This is Rittenhouse firing on you, correct. So it's safe to say that Rittenhouse did not fire on you until you pulled a pistol and aimed it at him. And at first he denied it. He said incorrect. And the defense was like, let's try this one more time so we can get your story straight. And then the second time he did admit that the only way that that Kyle Rittenhouse did not fire on him until after.
That was good by the defense.
Right.
But then, I feel like the defense really didn't do much after that. The judge used very specific language. He said, there's going to be a day of reckoning. Talking to the prosecution, there's going to be a day of reckoning. Because
their behavior was atrocious.
Right. There's going to be a day of reckoning. He said your case is built on a house of cards, and the defense didn't capitalize on that at all.
Right.
And it was very important that, the judge was basically handing it to them on a silver platter, and the defense was not doing anything with it. So I'm very, there's criticisms on all sides that we can criticize, but
let's just say if I ever had to hire a self-defense lawyer, it would not be that guy.
Not be that guy, yeah. But I mean,
maybe he learned something from this. Maybe he'll go back and watch the tape and get better. But it was not impressive defense.
Even worse was the prosecution side. So the prosecution was very, very poor. It was horrible. It was not honest. And a huge shout out to Rakeda Law. It's a YouTube channel that they live streamed everything, and it was a whole bunch of lawyers that got together and talked about it. And I learned so much. It was so much fun to watch. A huge shout out to them. If you want to go visit their channel, they have some good stuff. Nate the lawyer was on there, and we've mentioned him on the show a couple of times. He's really good. But they were basically kind of breaking it down, and your job as a prosecutor, obviously is to get a conviction, but is to be honest, right?
It's to expose the truth.
It's to expose the truth. So your first and foremost is the focus is the truth. And if the defense is bringing a case, or if you realize that your evidence is not what you think it is, then it's your job to either withdraw it or acknowledge it. You're not to push the envelope and to kind of twist and turn every piece of evidence to make it seem like your case is the right case. And that's literally everything that this prosecution did. I mean, from the picture that they were trying to say that Rosenbaum had provocation in order to, it was showing supposedly Rittenhouse holding his rifle lefty, and he never held his rifle lefty. There's a blob in the picture that's supposed to be his right hand under the barrel, and if you go a few frames back in the video, that blob is there. So obviously it's a stationary point. It's not Rittenhouse holding the gun. In fact, it was him pointing his hand at the guy who had the pistol. So it wasn't actually him.
It was the point when he was saying friendly.
Friendly, yeah. And then it shows in the video, it shows him withdrawing. And, the prosecution had the drone footage from the FBI, and they sent it to the defense with a compressed and cropped file. I mean, even then.
And then tried to claim that it was done as it was a what did they call it? A technological
error. They
yes.
they even blamed it on the defense. Like they said that it was because they sent it on an Android phone or something like that. They said they tried to airdrop it, but they couldn't because they had Android.
Right. Tried to claim that the defense should have noticed earlier that the video wasn't in
and literally the defense was like, we had no there's nothing to object to. There's nothing to ask for because we thought what we got was the evidence.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that was crazy. The prosecution, in my opinion, should face some sort of disciplinary action for that. To me, that was like so out of line of all the things to doctor or to misrepresent evidence just to support your case. That's crazy to me because what is the point of being in the justice system? What is the point of being a prosecutor if your only goal is to get convictions?
Yeah.
Like if you're not actually convicting the right people, or if you're not actually following the law, or actually doing something that makes your city or your state a better place, then why are you even a prosecutor? Why not just become a defense lawyer?
It's like this. It's like the same logic for when we play games and people cheat. Like when we play Call of Duty and people are cheating. Like what's the point of playing the game if you're just going to cheat?
Yeah,
like I mean,
how is it fun?
Yeah. So that's the same thing in this case. If you're not actually doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you're not actually doing the job, or you're not actually playing it right, then why are you doing it at all? Like obviously, like they tried. That I think the prosecution knows that they didn't have really a strong case, and this would have been huge for their reputation if they were able to get some sort of conviction. They honestly, their eyeballs were dollar signs.
Right.
I think that's what was happening, and it's disgusting to me because you have a 17-year-old whose life is now 18, whose life is in the balance. Like you're basically lying, manipulating.
You're willing to ruin someone's life over this.
Yep.
Right.
You're willing to ruin someone's life over this. And it was just disgusting to me. Every time the prosecution opened their mouths, I wanted to hurl because I just felt like they were just slimy. They were not honest. And it was just not playing fair.
Right. Yes, it was very disappointing.
It was very disappointing. But, at the end of the day, I couldn't be happier. We got the right outcome.
Get the right verdict.
Yeah, we did get the right verdict.
There's been some discussion this week, amongst some people that we know, and some people wanted Kyle Rittenhouse to face some sort of consequences. And the question, the other thing I saw a lot of is, we should give him a medal because he killed a pedophile. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. None of that matters.
Right.
It doesn't matter who he could have killed the most upstanding citizen in the entire world. He could have killed a pedophile. He could have killed a terrorist for all I care. It does not matter to me who he shot. What matters to me is why he did it.
Yep.
Did he act legally in self-defense? It doesn't matter who it was. It doesn't matter their reputation. It doesn't matter their previous crimes. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. All that matters is whether he acted within the constraints of the law. So did he act in self-defense? And does their self-defense law cover his actions? What he did legal? And yes, it was.
Yep.
So you can be mad that the law isn't different. You can be upset that he didn't have some sort of consequences because there's no law against what he did. You can be disappointed with the law. And if you live in that area and you think there should be a law against 17-year-olds walking around the streets of Kenosha with an AR, then bring that up with your local legislators. But the fact of the matter is what he did in no way was illegal. Right. And that's the issue. The issue is whether or not he acted within the law or he didn't.
I mean, I'm willing to hear the argument. Like if my 17-year-old was out there, of course I'd be worried and I'd be fearful, but
I'd probably shoot him with an AR. I'm kidding.
But yeah, I don't think it's wise for a 17-year-old to be out there.
Right. Was it the wisest decision? Not necessarily.
But
was it the wrong decision? Not necessarily.
Right.
Because the fact of the matter is he was defending his place of work. He was in the town that his father lives in. He was not in a strange place. He didn't travel to a place he didn't have ties to.
There's video evidence of him putting out fires. There's pictures of him removing graffiti.
Right.
Literally
trying to help people who had been injured and so on and so forth. So the question is you can have a differing opinion on whether you think he should have been there or whether you think it was a wise decision or whether you think it was a stupid decision and he shouldn't have been there. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that he had the legal right to be there.
Yeah.
He had the legal right to do what he was doing. He had the legal right to carry his AR with him, and he had the legal right to self-defense when someone threatened his life.
The only reason why he had an AR-15 was so that people could leave him alone and that he could do what he was there to do.
Right.
Good, to do good things. Right. And like, I mean, you could say, well, if he didn't have the gun, then nobody would have attacked him. We don't know that. Honestly, we don't know that. If Kyle Rittenhouse put out a dumpster fire that a whole bunch of people lit on fire, who's to say that they wouldn't have just trampled him? Because we've seen that over these Black Lives Matters riots. We've seen people getting beat on video, beat to death.
We literally saw a man stoned on the streets of Texas.
Stoned on the street of Texas,
because he tried to stop people from throwing bricks through a window, and then they instead turned the bricks on him and stoned him in the streets of Texas and killed him. So we saw that happening. Then not it wasn't like this happened, like Kyle Rittenhouse happened months later. This was all happening at the same time. Right. We literally, close to our hometown, kind of, within a couple hours of us, we saw a woman and her husband almost beaten to death in front of their store shop. Yep. An older couple, an elderly couple, almost beaten to death in front of their store shop because BLM rioters were busting through their windows and stealing their stuff out of their shop, and they went outside and said, leave us alone, and they almost beat her to death. Yeah. So we saw that stuff was all happening at the same time. This was not something that was outside of the characteristics of the riots that were going on or the rioters and their behavior. So was Kyle Rittenhouse's life going to be in danger one way or the other? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think and at any point, him being on the street and being on that side of the fence, being on the side of the fence who was trying to stop looting, trying to stop destruction, trying to clean up the city, trying to stop people from burning down something that was important to him, being on that side of the fence, his life was always in danger, whether he was carrying an AR or not. Yeah, and I'll say at the end of the day, if he felt compelled that he had to do what he had to do, I'm glad that he had the AR-15 because obviously, if he didn't, he very well could have been beaten to death by a skateboard. Right. So, I mean, and you would not even know his name now. Yep, and you would not even know his name, and because you can't tell me the name of the person who was beaten to death in Texas, and neither can I say his name because I don't remember it. But the fact of the matter is, nobody would know who Kyle Rittenhouse was if he had gotten beaten to death in the streets that night. Yeah. But instead, he defended himself and he defended his rights, and in this case, the outcome of this case defends our rights as well. So. Yeah. So there's a as you know, Twitter being the toxic place that it is, there is so there's some controversy going around, and on Twitter, on Twitter concerning this case, and I should have had this up, but I'll pull it up real quick. This is a pinned tweet from the official blue check mark, by the way, official Black Lives Matter Twitter account. They said Kyle Rittenhouse found not guilty on all accounts. On all counts. This is how the systems conspire to entrench white supremacy. Funny how he shot at 3 white people and he's a white supremacist. For the life of me, I cannot understand anybody linking Kyle Rittenhouse to white supremacy. I mean, I get that he was there trying to stop a business from being burned down by BLM activists. Okay, that's a stretch for you to say he's a white supremacist. I mean, even the White House came out and called him a white supremacist. I honestly think that there are people out there who honestly believe that Kyle Rittenhouse was going there to shoot protesters, and that the people who tried to take his gun were trying to stop him from shooting protesters. The thing is, if he was going there to shoot protesters, he could have gotten a lot more than 3 people. I know. He is a really bad if you believe shooter. That, if you honestly believe that Kyle Rittenhouse was going to intentionally incite violence, then you honestly need to change where you get your news. Seriously, you honestly need to rethink of how you get your information fed, because if you honestly believe that, you have not watched 1 ounce of truth, because that is completely the opposite, and 12 jurors agree. Right. So I think Ben Shapiro had a great tweet, and he says, young white man goes to city to defend private property against rioters, shoots 3 white people trying to kill him, wrongfully prosecuted, correctly acquitted. And the media, this is how they're responding: is this evidence? This is evidence that America hates black people. Yeah. And so that's exactly what the narrative is going to be for the next few weeks. Right. Right, because I think the White House is going to really capitalize on this and try to, because one of the things Jen Psaki came out the other day, she said the Biden administration is very concerned with vigilantes. Yeah. Well, you should be concerned with vigilantes because you've defunded all the police and they're the only thing out there now. I'm sorry, but the fact that entire cities were burned down last year and nobody would call in the National Guard because they didn't want Trump to get reelected. I mean, it's insane. The corruption that happened in 2020 just to sway an election, just to sway the hearts of people, trying to make them think that white people hate black people or that there's this massive amount of white supremacy in America. Listen, if America was literally living in a day and age where white supremacy reigned supreme, then you would not see black people in any elevated position, especially the presidency. The stinking president was a black person, and you're telling me that America
Some people say he wasn't black enough.
Yeah, and that America is like inherently racist. We literally voted a black person to the highest office in the United States. He was the highest level of office in the United States, and yet the highest level of authority in the United States, and yet people will still try to spin the narrative that America is inherently racist, and that's just, it's bogus.
You know, and this is like kind of like a mind-blowing moment for me, but it's like, if the White House is concerned with vigilantes, like it's, you know, I'm not promoting vigilante, like don't take the law in your own hands, don't be a Batman, but it kind of implies that something is happening that's wrong, right? And people are taking it into their own hands. So, like, are you saying that Kyle Rittenhouse being a quote-unquote vigilante, even though he wasn't, he was defending himself.
Right.
But if he was being a vigilante, does that mean somebody was doing something wrong? Because the media and the White House, they say that these are protesters and they're expressing themselves and that, you know...
They were peacefully
protesting.
If you point a gun at a 17-year-old, or if you try to beat him in the head with a skateboard, you are peacefully protesting.
Yeah.
Remember that. And that vigilante has no right to defend himself. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. You know, it's just an unfortunate spin. You know, it's an unfortunate situation that shouldn't really have happened. And if the government had been doing its job, it wouldn't have happened. And when I say the government wasn't doing its job, I specifically call out Donald Trump on that. I believe that he should have called in the National Guard. He should have mobilized the National Guard.
Yeah, it's another thing that we kind of disagree on.
We do disagree a little bit. That is actually something that we disagree on.
I understand your point. I think your point is valid. I also understand how Donald Trump acted the way that he did. I understand why he did.
No, I understand why he let it play out. I think that he thought people would recognize the craziness of the Democrats. But to me, it didn't matter. It didn't matter to me whether people saw the craziness of the Democrats. None of that mattered to me. What mattered to me is the lives that were being destroyed. What mattered to me was the destruction that was happening in our cities. And he should have federalized the National Guard, and he should have shut it down. It shouldn't have mattered whether Mayor Lightfoot or Mayor Monopolists or whatever, you know, all their names are. It shouldn't have mattered whether they wanted to bring in the National Guard or not. He should have federalized the National Guard, and he should have shut down the rioting. He should have shut it down in Minneapolis. He should have shut it down in New York. He should have shut it down in Texas. He should have shut it down. And I mean, Texas and Florida, they kind of, you know, were able to handle their own. But these more liberal cities, you know, there was a lot of rioting that went on. I mean, like an entire mall was set on fire in Rochester, New York. You know, businesses were being burned down. People going into restaurants and flipping over tables while people were sitting there eating their dinners and stuff like that. Mobilize the National Guard, get in there, bust some heads, let the National Guard take care of it. And then there's no protesting. There's no burning down of buildings.
That's probably the reason why it slowed down, because there was really no end in sight until the National Guard was mobilized in these cities.
But interestingly enough, wasn't done until after the election. Once it was clear that Biden was going to be the next president, that's when these Democratic governors and mayors and stuff started bringing in the National Guard. So me personally, when I say the government didn't do its job, I don't just mean Democrats there. I think Donald Trump failed the country greatly
I totally, you know, acknowledge that point. I'll just have my personal rebuttal playing devil's advocate. I think Donald Trump really wanted to be the conservative that he promised to be. And, you know, whether it was, you know, the right or the wrong decision, I think he wanted it to leave it up to the governors. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, it was to try to expose the Democrats. And I think it was to try to be there was a political attachment to his decision. But I respect it. And I don't know if I would have done the same thing if I was president, but I
wouldn't have, man.
I can see why he did it, you know, because every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Right. And you know, it sets a precedent if you're so, and I feel like that's what Democrats do. They're so quickly to react, and then they do something, and then when the Republicans do it, they're like, no, we don't want to do that. Like the filibuster, for example. Like the filibuster was first implemented by Democrats, and now they're the ones that are trying to get rid of it because Republicans do it all the time.
Right.
So like stuff like that, where like I think it sets a precedent. And I think Donald Trump was thinking, what are the consequences if I do this? You know, is it going to be bad for the country if I do this knee-jerk reaction? Will people wake up and realize that their governors that they voted in don't care about them if I hold back a little bit? You know, there's a lot of things that are at play here. And like I said, I totally see where you're coming from and your point of view. Just that, you know, I can also see the opposite. So
yeah, you know, I definitely see Donald Trump's point of view. It's not that I don't see it. It's that I'm a firm believer that when something happens, that you need to squall it right away. You need to like end it then, because I think things easily escalate. And when you're in a country that is as divided as our country was in 2020, and then going forward, even continuing into today, I think that you have to be very careful when you are the president of the United States what you tolerate from the behavior of citizens. So, you know, it's just, and it's not, and by tolerate, I don't mean like as far as allowing us to have rights, but I mean tolerate as far as allowing people to break the law. Yeah. And I think it's a very slippery slope when you start allowing people to go out and riot and be crazy and they don't take care of it. You know,
Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder, all those guys have said it, you know, you got to enforce low-level crime, because if people can get away with low-level crime, then, you know, things escalate. And that's exactly what we see.
Right.
So.
We've seen that majorly in 2021, because that's one of the things that they've done is they've kind of de-escalated low-level crime in poorer communities or in blacker communities, which, you know, is not to be, you know, like pointing out race on our behalf, but that's like actually literally what the White House has done. And it's done the opposite. It has had the opposite effect. They've seen a rise in crime. They've seen a rise in
homelessness,
right.
You know,
in bad, you know, basically bad behavior, and it's starting to destroy cities, and so it's unfortunate.
It's going to have the same thing as, you know, the war on drugs, where like there was a whole bunch of black people that got incriminated for drugs, and then there's a whole bunch of people who grew up without fathers. Same thing is going to happen if you decriminalize low level crime, especially like in New York City and Los Angeles, where, you know, predominantly it's minorities that are committing crimes in these urban areas. If you send them to prison for doing high level crimes, then, you know, people are going to be raised without fathers. And that's kind of like what I think the biggest problem with like the minority communities is that it's not that there's some sort of system that's set up against them. It's not that they can't get ahead. It's not any of that. I think it's because they don't have a 2-parent household.
Right.
Or like you see like. And that was completely the opposite in the 60s, 70s. You know, the minorities, besides, you know, obviously all the trials that they had to go through in that time, you know, coming out of segregation, but they were thriving as far as, you know, like, you know, families and people being successful. There was a high rate of people starting to go to college and finishing high school among the minority communities. And that was because father homes in minority communities were like at 80, 70, 80%. And now it's like completely flip-flop, where it's like 20, 30% today. And
it's unfortunate. So, and people don't really realize the importance of having a 2-parent household, but it's extremely important. I have a really hard time really supporting family cores that don't involve a father figure. You know, for me, I think it's really detrimental to have a family without a father figure in it. I think it's detrimental for children. I think especially for young men, it's very detrimental to be raised in a household where there's no father figure. So it's very important. And
I mean, even though I'll make this clear, like even though we disagree with certain, you know, family structures, like if a kid had 2 moms, I think that you could have some success with that if like he has like a grandfather, you know, like obviously those 2 mothers have like a grandfather
or a mentor or something. I think it's very important to have a male influence in especially in a young man's life. It's
but we've even seen that
in a girl's life as well. But I think especially in young men.
And we've even seen that in heterosexual couples where like the father has been either absent or just neglected, and so we've seen
or
that.
Mom runs the household and dad doesn't take a lot of responsibility. I mean,
so we're not trying to single anybody out,
right?
But.
No, it's detrimental in any shape or form if a father is not being the head of the household. So get it together, because
get it together. Yeah, so we got, I don't know, many of our viewers already know this, but we do have big news that we're pregnant, we're expecting a baby. So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm
So
sure you've realized, you've known that maybe she's grown a little bit.
You were like, man, what's Brittany doing? It's not even holiday season yet.
Yeah.
Well, guess what, guys?
Yeah, she's got a baby in her belly.
Yep.
And so we're really excited about that.
Yeah, we're a little over halfway. So we've got a baby coming soon. And we're excited about it.
Baby girl. Yep.
Baby girl. Yep. Well, excited about it. Been buying some pink clothes, and Nico's been cringing a little about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got some good outfits though.
Yeah, I had the first shopping trip. I came home. He said, "This is exactly what I would have expected you to pick out." And I'm like, "These are so cute, though." He's like, "Yeah, this is exactly what I expected."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, calm down, Dad. She's a girl, okay?"
So we're running pretty short on time, but I think it's just if we want to mention this real quick. This is another thing that we want to mention. We're trying to catch up on the news since we've been gone for a few weeks.
Yeah.
But earlier this month,
so we covered one whole story.
Yeah.
That's how we try to catch up.
So I try to catch up. Yeah.
We're very good at what we do.
But this was earlier in the month, and I'm reading this article from Newsweek. Pfizer announced that they're coming out with a drug, Paxlovid, which is a reaction to molnupiravir that was, being used in the EU and European countries, and they've seen a higher. We talked about molnupiravir when it first came out, like when it was first announced. First announced for COVID, because it's been around for a while.
Right. So molnupiravir originally was developed as a flu drug.
Yeah.
Then they started doing some trials, and they were almost through phase 3 testing when we talked about this a few weeks ago. So molnupiravir saw like a huge reduction in hospitalizations. They had no deaths in their group that actually received the treatment.
Check out that episode if you want to.
Yeah. So go back and watch our episode where we talk about molnupiravir. We said it here first. So molnupiravir then began petitioning the U.S. for emergency use against COVID. The U.S. In good form ignored them because why not continue to let citizens die in order to push your vaccine? And then Europe approved it for emergency use in the fight against COVID. And that happened on a Thursday. So on Thursday, not this past Thursday, a couple Thursdays ago, because we haven't been here in a while.
Yeah.
But that was approved on a Thursday. And they immediately, there were articles, we expect the U.S. to follow suit, And funny enough, Pfizer on Friday came out and announced that they also have a drug to treat. So, anybody who thinks that I'm a conspiracy theorist... Guess where I was going with that.
Yeah.
So I found it very interesting that the United States denied emergency use for molnupiravir, and then the moment that Europe passes it and allows it to happen, and it puts more pressure on the U.S., all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the government's little love child Pfizer comes out with a drug that also treats.
I mean, I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but there's no coincidence that literally within 24 hours, Pfizer has a drug that does the same thing as molnupiravir.
Right. And molnupiravir had been petitioning the government for weeks. So it's not like molnupiravir just came out of nowhere and all of a sudden Pfizer was like, oh, shoot, we should have announced this first.
Yeah.
Molnupiravir had been around for weeks and had been trying to get government approval and was not receiving it. And then all of a sudden they receive it in Europe and Pfizer's like, oh, wait. No, we have a drug to treat COVID. So very disappointing.
Who knows if they were done trying it?
It ticks me off because you know what? Your family and your friends who have been dying of COVID, they didn't have to. They did not have to. There have been treatments out there. There have been doctors. There have been nurses who have been prescribing it. There have been pharmacies who have been refusing to fill it.
Molnupiravir and the other one, ivermectin.
Hydrochloroquine. Chloroquine, however you pronounce that. Those treatments have been out there, and the government and the healthcare system have allowed your friends and your family and people that you love and people that you know to die in order to push this vaccination. The only way that things are going to go back to normal is if you get vaccinated, and they refused to treat your loved ones, and they allowed them to die so that they could experiment on you with this stupid vaccine, and yet here we are all of a sudden, like Molnupiravir is like pushing this, like, hey, we want to get out here, we want to get out here, and then Pfizer suddenly, magically, out of the clouds, comes out with a treatment for COVID. It ticks me off. It makes me so mad. It makes me so mad at the government. It makes me so mad at these pharmaceutical companies that they would experiment on the American people.
And
this
at the
way.
end of
It's
the day,
infuriating.
And at the end of the day, our message to you guys is that, you know, don't put so much faith in these institutions. Don't put so much faith into, you know, Fauci and Leanna Wang and all these guys on CNN, MSNBC, and all of like Fox. Like I feel like there's a large group of the American people that put so much faith in these institutions, and they are not looking out for your self-interest. They're not looking out for your health. They're not, you know, they're doing whatever the agenda is, whatever fits their narrative, whatever the talk of the town is. That's what their objective is. It's not to protect you. It's not to protect your family. You need
It is to protect their pocketbooks. I 100,
Their pocketbooks?
100%. Their
Nice word, their pocketbooks.
Their pocketbooks. Do people say pocketbooks anymore?
No.
This is their wallets.
For the longest time, I think up until like my preteen years, I always thought it was pocketbooks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, that was like a big thing when I was a kid. Like
Pocketbooks.
everybody said pocketbooks.
Yeah.
Pocketbooks.
Yep.
So yeah, no, they did it. They did it to protect their wallets. Everything that the government has done up to this point has been in the interest. And by government, I mean the Biden administration, because even President Trump was pushing hydrochloroquine and was receiving so much backlash for it at the time. Oh, the president shouldn't be recommending medical care. And then you've got Biden up there all dementiated, like, vaccine, and all of a sudden people are supposed to like bow down and get shots.
How funny is that Biden's up there
encouraging you to do it? Like the same person who discouraged Trump from giving medical advice from the White House is doing the same thing, because all that matters to them is money. What matters is that money talks. And so they're going to use your money to vaccinate the entire country with a drug that they don't know the side effects of. They don't know the long term. Even Pfizer just came out and actually, this is like completely off topic, but Pfizer came out this week and asked for the ability not to release COVID data with the vaccine for the next 55 years.
Wow.
They want an extension to not have to release the data for 55 years. Now, why do you need 55 years if your vaccine is so darn awesome?
Yeah.
Why do you need 55 years to release the side effects, to release the death count, to release all of that stuff? Why do you need 55 years for that?
That's nutty.
I like it. It makes no sense to me, and it drives me crazy that all of this whole thing has been literally fueled by money, and it's sickening. It makes me so mad that the lives of the American people are so unimportant to the government.
And, you know, I don't think the Trump administration did everything perfect when it came to COVID, but the amount of corruption that we're seeing in this administration is uncanny. Like it's crazy that it's coming from the U.S. government. I would expect something like this to be like Venezuela or Cuba.
Right. I mean, that's exactly what you would be thinking. You'd be thinking like third world country. You'd be thinking like communist rule, socialism. Like that's what you'd be thinking. You would not be thinking the United States. You would not be thinking democracy. You would not be thinking, free country. You would not be thinking any of that. But here we are, our lives literally being ruled, whether you get to live or whether you get treatment or not, dependent on the government and how much money they're making on it. And it ticks me right off,
Ticks
man.
you right off.
Ticks me right off.
But let's bring it back to the top.
Bring it full circle.
Yeah, let's bring it full circle. Bring it back to the top because good vibes.
We didn't die. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't die. We didn't die. Okay. Yes, 2 unvaccinated COVID survivors.
We beat the odds, folks.
Yeah, we beat the odds.
With our ibuprofen.
I had a 99.
I didn't even take ibuprofen because you know what? I'm pregnant, so I toughed it out.
Yeah.
No Mucinex for my stuffy nose. I just used good old tissues.
But yeah, we have good vibes around here because, Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted and, justice reigns supreme for now. And,
was I using strong language when I said ticks me off?
It ticks you off, ticks you right off. I'm going to grab my pocketbook.
My pocketbook.
That's good.
Good times.
Good times. But yeah, so thank you for tuning in to our season finale. We'll be off for the holiday season, but look on our socials, our YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff.
Yeah, if you're following us on YouTube and not following us on Facebook, make sure to give us a like so you can stay up to date with what's going on.
Yep.
And I think Nico wants to get a little involved with TikTok. Chinatown.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. TikTok. We're on TikTok and all that stuff.
Well,
so
we are not on TikTok. We.
But yeah, so we're looking to do some fun short form things that we can keep things going and give you guys some content throughout the holiday season. But we're gonna look to kick off our next season next year at sometime in January. So look for that. And you guys have a happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yeah, seriously, enjoy it. Travel to see your family.
Yep.
Go visit your friends. Hug people. Live it up, because you know what? It's Christmas time, and it's the best stinking time of the year. It's so great. So yeah.
All right,
you
we'll
do it.
Yeah, we'll
do
see
it
you
all up,
guys.